It's something we just have to adapt to, dude. You have to get used to it.
So let's just sort of begin the show, Curtis. All right. So a lot's changed. Okay, let's firstly talk about how did we end up to two people on a how did we end up from the casting couch to two people on a screen here? You know, let's just explain to everyone.
Make sure your mic is like close. You got to be close to your. I think you got to be a little bit closer to your mic. Now I can't hear you. Did you press the button? The mute button. We're off to a good start.
So let me explain the whole afternoon, okay, to our audience. So obviously we made the post saying that we messed up the recording. So we literally recorded a whole 2-hour episode last week, but until I got into the editing process, I realized that it picked up like the first 30 seconds and then it will cut out. And then I was like, okay, then a couple of days later, well, then after that, I was like, okay, well, I got to fix this to make sure this doesn't happen, right? So I went to go and fix it and it was all good. It was all good, right? It was even good up until today. I literally did a test before we were going to record, just as I usually set up on the casting couch for BBC. And then just the one mic, like the one that Curtis was using, just dead. Like literally we couldn't even, because what was happening is that with the our cables, if we got the cables in a specific position, then it would work. But then this wouldn't work at all. So we're like, all right, we just can't do that there. And then we started instantly thinking of alternatives. And we're like, well, why don't we just record it like it would be like a stream? You know, this is like a stream setup type thing. So this is essentially how we're here.
Well, we found out that it was the cable, the XLR cable.
The XLR cables.
Yeah, we isolated the problem.
So we don't know if this is going to be permanent. Is that correct?
Well, okay, so the two choices are we buy new XLR cables and we go back to the setup that we were at before. So we had a bit of a discussion about the advantages and disadvantages with doing it both ways. Now, let's actually just quickly for the audience, let's talk about the advantages.
And we need your opinion as well.
This is essentially, the audience should decide this.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Which one's better? Which one do you prefer?
So the advantages of doing what we're doing now, this whole stream, it's called StreamYard. Essentially, this is where me and Nathan are just now, we're not together. He's in his room, I'm in my room. The advantages are tech-wise, it's probably much easier in terms of just ease, which you guys don't really care about that. So that's one thing. We can actually do guests, a lot more guests with this one because we don't need them in person. More flexible, yeah. So we could just get someone from NA or EU and do it like an actual guest, which would be cool. That's a big one. And I would say that we could actually even get people, you guys, the listeners in here. I just burped. I don't know if it picked that up.
No, it was fine.
Okay.
We can also do.
We get you guys in.
Maybe do a live stream.
And we can maybe live stream this one day.
Yeah.
Whether it's a private live stream or a public live stream, we'll decide that we can even do that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're the advantages. The disadvantages, the bad things, is that the audio quality is lessened. Me and Nathan probably won't have as much of a connection because we're not in person, right? So maybe we get distracted more or whatever.
There's less hand movements. And Curtis, guess what they miss out on? They miss out on the Curtis thighs, man.
They miss out on the Curtis thighs. That's another thing.
Camera quality. Camera quality
I think the camera is about the same.
It's probably about the same, isn't it? Yeah.
And yeah, this is the overall dynamic and feel. Like, and also this may affect the pure podcast listeners.
Yeah, so this is my biggest concern is that people listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Yeah, obviously the audio quality is a lot worse, but I'm happy. If you guys are happy with this setup, happier, then I will do research. Like we will both need to figure out how to get our mics to be a lot better. I mean, our mics are like okay, like $200 mics, right?
No, these are pretty good quality mics.
These are good quality mics. Yeah, the Blue Yetis. But I know there's better, you know.
Or maybe these pop filters are ruining it, Nathan.
Oh my God, maybe.
But I don't know. Maybe I should take it off. I don't know.
Take it off quickly. Let's just both take them off.
No, we can't. We can't. Not in the middle of a recording,
committed.
Dude.
Okay, we're committed, aren't we? All right. God, Curtis, that was just such a dumb move, man. Honestly, I don't think they're designed to do that.
No, the pop filters are. They're good for podcasts. You need them.
Yeah,
because you talk so close to you actually need it because you talk so close to the mic.
Okay,
to get better quality. Trust me.
All right. Well, if anyone's an expert on audio,
trust me,
Because Curtis is not an expert. Curtis is the worst tech person on planet Earth. Let us know in the comments, and I'll add you on Discord if there's someone who actually understands tech.
The other good thing about this, Nathan, is that we don't have to stop and start.
Yeah, we don't have to stop the
There's
camera.
no batteries. It's so easy.
It is easier. My life's a lot less stressful because most of the time I'm always thinking like, when's it gonna stop? Like, because you know you always like point at it. It's like, Nathan, you go change the batch. It's like you got to go press it to go on again, and so it's definitely easier for us. But again, it's not about that. It's about the experience of our loyal BBC listeners. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
So definitely want to hear your thoughts on this. Again, this is only a temporary solution. We're basically forced into this. Like we literally said today, it's like, do we want to record an episode or like we have to do something? Because you know, like I loved everyone's comments saying they thought that I died. They thought you killed me, Curtis, because you're so angry about the audio issues in the past. And then this episode we recorded for 2 hours and it's just dead. Enough. Curtis had enough. See you later, Nathan. You're going to jail. You're going to prison for my death. And then that's the end of Coach Curtis and his YouTube channel.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was either this or nothing. I'm like, screw it.
Well, you even had the idea, which was ridiculous, Curtis, of literally we had one person as the mic, and then we like share the one microphone that was working.
Yeah, because one of them was working. One of the mics was still working.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was thinking we could maybe share the mic, but whatever. We'll adapt. We'll get feedback from you guys in the community, and we'll see what they say, and we'll go from there. So,
all right, so Curtis, do you want to just jump into the official intro now, and then we can explain that?
All right. So this episode, what are we up to now? 15?
Yep, we're on episode 15. So,
but weird because we just done 15. We're gonna do it again. So, welcome everyone to another episode of Broken by Concept, episode 15. I'm your host, Coach Curtis, and this is Nathan Motts, my co-host. And
again, you're the host and I'm the co-host. Yeah, yep. Go on, Curtis.
Yep. And then
so obviously if you're listening, we didn't have a episode released last week due to audio issues. We just explained if you're listening to this on Spotify or podcast, we just explained the reason for it and why our mic quality is significantly different because we've actually changed our setup. You have to go to our YouTube channel, Broken by Concept, to look at the explanation for the last 5 minutes. And that's the reason why we are sounding a little bit different if you're only, because there is some people that only listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Well, for those people, I do recommend going onto the YouTube and checking out what we said.
Yeah,
make a lot more sense. All right, so
and this is just a weird episode in general, Curtis, because we want to talk about. So we thought that last episode, the one that we recorded, that was messed up. After 2 hours, we thought that was actually pretty good. So we're going to revisit all the topics, but which is going to feel weird for us because it's like we're repeating it, you know. But I think it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, we have to talk about this stuff. I don't want to skip over that. We spoke about some really important topics. And I think where we started last week, when we got to touch on it quickly, was we spoke about the grand final, right? It was
let's touch on Worlds, which feels so weird because, Worlds feels like it was so long ago.
Feels so long ago, man.
It's literally not even a week. It's like 4 or 5 days, you know?
Yeah. What were the main takeaways, Nathan? What we talking about?
What did you think of the opening ceremony compared to other years, by the way, Curtis?
I mean, for me, I found it quite underwhelming comparatively to the other years.
It was hard to top last year's, right? Last year's was amazing, right?
It just felt a little bit, something about it felt inauthentic. And I can't really put my finger on it.
You think they tried too hard?
I'm just going to blame it on COVID.
Yeah. Given the circumstances.
Like, it just felt sloppy. It just felt very, like, half-assed in a way. Like, it's like... Everything was underwhelming. Like that whole thing where that guy was like going around with the swords and shit. It's like
the battle scene. I see what they were trying to do with it.
I can see what they're trying to do.
They're trying to recreate the last year?
Rise.
The Rise video clip. Yeah.
I wasn't a fan of it. But
I think it was cool. They were trying to merge like all the songs together and all that sort of stuff, you know?
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I just felt like lower quality than the other years. But so obviously, Dam won 3-1 over Suning. And one thing that surprised me is how many of the games were close. The first 3 games could have gone either way, right? Would you agree with that, Nathan? The first 3 games could have gone either way.
I think game 1, 100%. I mean, it just all came down to that one dragon fight for Seoul, I think it was, where Bin went for the ultimate. He altered Pantheon. Remember that?
Oh yeah, that's one thing that I was looking
That
at.
fight
I was
was
so
huge.
confused, man.
Yeah.
I was so
And then
confused about that fight.
Azir's positioning.
Yeah, if you're not familiar, what I would recommend going over the VOD if you are interested, there was this one specific team fight around. It was the Infernal Soul, I believe. Infernal Soul fight, and was it it was Infernal Soul, wasn't it, Nathan?
Yeah, I can't
Was
remember.
it?
It was some soul. It was a soul
Or was
fight.
it a Soul fight? Anyway, Sydney were actually kind of ahead at this point, and Bin specifically was playing Wukong. And he was like kind of positioned around the side, around one of the entrances around Dragon. But that was fine. That was good. He should have been looking for the flank. Obviously, he was like kind of, posturing around the corner. But then at the same time, the Azir, which was Angel, and Sword Art on Morgana were also kind of going around the back of the Dragon Pit, trying to do a flank as well. So usually you don't see that sort of thing. I mean, sometimes you see those 1-3-1 compositions where you have two flankers where they just want to dive onto the back line. But it felt like in that situation, Azir was very fed. I believe Azir had 2 completed items. They could have easily just done the 4-1. Azir sit with the team
And Wukong flank.
Yeah, let Wukong create space in the back line, and then you kind of win that fight. But 2 things went wrong. Azir went on the flank as well, which then left One Fang and SOFM exposed because then it was like a 2-2-1 situation. And whenever you're a team in that situation, whether you're playing Clash or whatever, if you see the team split that much, you just engage on any one of them, any direction, just all in, go. Whether it's on the Morgan Azir, whether it's on the SOFM and One Fang, or whether it's straight onto Bin. You just all in on one direction, you make the pick, and you kind of force a fight before they can actually regroup. Anyway, that was the first thing I didn't like. And the other thing was that Bin just straight up engaged onto the Pantheon, wasted Wukong all through the fight. They lost that fight. I think Damwon actually got Baron as well off that. And then that kind of turned the tides of that game. Obviously, they lost.
Oh, by the way, on game 1 as well, you hated the Arcane comment. I remember you pointing that out specifically. Like, I hate Arcane comment, especially in this matchup and the game pace in its first game. And one thing you talked about on the last podcast as well. I mean, the one that we didn't end up getting published. The way grand finals, because we've experienced a lot of grand finals. Game 1, the first couple of minutes of the first game of a grand final.
Every single grand final in every region, without fail, is slow. They're just slow. Everyone's shitting
the entire game or the first couple of minutes?
I would say the entire early... Yeah, I would say the first 15, 20 minutes is slow. That game, I believe there was like 1 kill. But the first kill wasn't until like something ridiculous. I think it wasn't until like 18 minutes.
Yeah, it was 0-0 for a long time.
It was 0-0-0 for a long time. I mean, yeah, because everyone's shitting themselves. They're very conservative. And Azir that game went Arcane Comet into
Arcane Comet was designed for lane bullying. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a lane bully, and you want to get a lot of pressure. You want to poke out the Orianna, play for pressure, that sort of thing. And play for pressure is fine, but given in that composition or that comp specifically, Azir was versing an Ornn.
You need lethal tempo to chop it down.
Yeah, like lethal tempo and just going the standard route just would have made a lot more sense to me, given how you could probably safely predict it was going to go to like some form of dragon fight, Rift Herald fight, front to back team fight, in which Comet is essentially useless. So, and he just went even in lane with his Comet. I'm like, all right, man, you could have significantly turned the tides of this game if you were to go lethal tempo. Even Conqueror, even though I hate Conqueror and Azir, lethal tempo is like the perfect balance. But that was another thing I wasn't really happy with. And apart from that, what were you, man? Any other takeaways, Nathan? I mean,
from
that one was a
game.
favorite. Or just in general.
In general, also, I mean, I love the Rengar pick into Eve game 2 and SOFM's build, like literally Cinderhulk into Knight's Vow, into Spirit Visage.
Wait, did you like that, or you thought it was weird? Like, what?
I mean, so we had a discussion during the game where we were confused about what's the identity of Tank Rengar. Like, he's not one-shotting anyone, and he's not exactly doing... he can peel with his E, but he can't peel like it. His kit's not designed to peel. But he was just creating chaos, man. You know, and you know what? He actually did still do. He caught off Lucian in the river like a couple of times. Even full tank. I mean, I think he needed Bin for it as well, but like that. But I mean, like as Eve, the Rengar full tank, like just done. I mean, Rengar already full damage is already hard enough to deal with in terms of to kill. I mean, obviously you can kill him as Eve. It's more possible. Right. Literally as Tank Rengar, it's impossible. So it's one target, gone. Just gone. Impossible to kill, The
other thing as well, by the way, with that build, it allows you to build a lot of CDR, doesn't it? Because you rush Knight's Vow.
Yeah, you have a lot of CDR. That's
and
right.
CDR is No, CDR supported for Rengar because the ultimate
usage. That's right.
Yeah, so that's the other thing someone said in my Twitch chat. They're saying how the great thing about that build, if you're going Knights Balance and Spirit Visage, you're going a lot of CDR comparatively to what you would also go on Rengar. If you were to go a lethality Rengar, yes, you would get CDR from the first lethality item, but you're most likely
also get it from Warrior as well, Curtis. 10%, 10% from thing. You still have pretty much
the same amount of CDR. But Edge and Knight doesn't give you CDR though. If you were to go Edge and Knight, no, it doesn't.
That's right. Yeah, and he probably would have. I mean, Curtis, honestly, that's not why you would go that build. I think it's just a thing for him,
right? Fair enough. I mean, to be honest, I personally, I'm not a jungler, but it doesn't feel right to me because it's like, why not just go like Lee Sin? Yes, obviously it's not as a hard counter to Evelyn.
Yeah, I actually
Lee Sin hard tank is like, that. I mean,
yeah,
Lee Sin's
you could do the same thing, and he did that. SOFM did go nuts for Lee Sin and stuff like that. It's
like you could peel much better. You could peel way better.
You have more strength early game as well. You can still shut down Eve.
I it's like, why just not play Lee? But whatever,
And then SOFM's next build, and this is the thing that just blew my brain: the Omni Stone.
Oh yeah.
Like I literally just spent like that whole series. I wasn't even watching the game. I was just trying to
the whole time just roasting him.
No, well, I wasn't. I mean, I was roasting him eventually.
You weren't roasting in a sarcastic way.
I was trying to figure it out, Curtis. Like this guy obviously knows a lot more than me. Okay, I mean, at the end of the day, we need to understand that people have certain strategies that, sometimes the average viewer doesn't know, but I was really trying to work this one out. And I'm just sitting there watching it and like the little runes that come up and it's like grass.
We're talking about Omnistone, how he took Omnistone on Nidalee.
On Nidalee. It's like grass pops up, like fleet of footwork. You're not going to do anything as Nid with these runes. It was actually painful to see the rotation of the runes of Omnistone. It's useless. And the only thing we could be thinking of was, do you use it for the tree? Because you're a big fan of the inspiration tree, right?
Yeah,
you don't like domination. You're like the domination tree hater, aren't you, Curtis?
Yeah, I don't like the domination tree. I mean, on a jungler, it's not too bad. And I mean, to be honest, Nidalee's probably one of those few champions that could probably utilize the entirety of the domination tree because I'm assuming you go sudden impact, right?
Yeah, sudden impact, zombie ward, and you could Ravenous Hunter.
Yeah, you could proc all of them very well.
Yeah.
But most mid laners, the reason I'm not a fan of it is because unless you're like an assassin that gets something like a Fizz that gets a lot of, or an Echo that gets a lot of value from Zombie Ward, Ghost Poro and Sudden Impact and Ravenous Hunter or Ultimate Hunter or whatever, then I hate taking it. And most mages and mid laners in the game don't really get much use out of those. I mean, yes, you get a bit of value of Taste of Blood if you want to go down that route, but comparatively to the sorcery tree or precision tree or inspiration tree, you just get much more value. I mean, that was my thought process. Maybe he just wanted the scaling approach with the inspiration tree, but yeah, I can't tell you that one, and I really don't understand either the Omnistone.
If anyone has any ideas, I'd love to know in the comments. Did people talk about it on Twitter? Did Alice mention anything about it?
I didn't really look.
I wasn't really looking on Twitter. I was so tired because we were so tired that day, weren't we?
We
literally went to sleep. It was pretty late for us after.
Yeah, I was fried.
And then, so that was game 3 about the Omnistone Nid thing. And then game 4 was pretty much just...
This is Stomp.
Just a Stomp, Kindred Gary.
Well, that went straight into last time we spoke about the finals format, which... so I got a really good question, an interesting question from Wiz. Shout out to Wiz. I'm pretty sure he listens to the podcast. And he was talking about how he personally is not a fan of the finals format. And specifically, he hates the idea of, the grand final being a single best of 5. And he used the analogy or the example of the NBA finals. And the NBA finals was it's like a best of 7 over the period of 2 weeks, isn't it?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's a best of 7 over the course of 2 weeks or something
that.
They
play at one person's home ground, one person's home ground, one person's home ground. They switch it up, right?
They switch. But I was actually looking into it recently, and I believe it actually goes you play 2 games at one arena, and then you go 3 at the other one or something like that.
The thing about, before you go on, the thing about that doesn't really matter for League, because is there a home ground advantage?
No, I'm not saying this in reference to the home ground. What I'm saying,
this is just another topic out of curiosity. It doesn't, right? Does the crowd? What do you think? Because the difference with
for game 1, yes,
NBA and stuff like that, or physical sports, is that you're physically training in that arena every day.
Yeah,
but for League, obviously crowds an aspect as well. It's the home crowd, because then obviously they're psyching you out psychologically and stuff like that, right? You have to deal with that.
Yeah.
But it's not like you're playing in I mean, I guess
Yeah,
you
in
could.
the same. Well, if they think about AFL,
I
right?
wouldn't do that. Yeah.
Think about AFL home ground advantage. The reason why it's a home ground advantage is because you literally train
That's right.
on that.
And they're used to the grass and the
wind, yeah,
sides,
everything. Because the
the
size of the
climate.
fields in AFL in Australia, it's called Australian Football League, the ground sizes actually differ slightly.
There's like wider ones and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, the MCGs are significantly bigger than something like probably the SCG or like the what are the other one in Brisbane, the Gabba or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So there's actually different sizes and also different conditions, both heat as well. That's the same as NFL, I'm assuming. I don't know if the sizes are different, but you have different conditions, both like the temperatures and humidity and things like that. But yeah, in league, you just don't have that.
Yeah.
But the main thing he was saying is what his suggestion was, instead of one singular best of 5, you would have a best of 5 made out of best of 3s. So it'd be potentially 5 best of 3s. And the reason he said this is because he thinks that the series are too short and there's too much room for tilt. There's too much room for so okay, say for example, like this happened in this series, Dam 1 win game 1-2. The chances are the team comes back and reverse sweeps in the grand final is so slim. Not many, like a reverse sweep is incredibly, uncommon. It's not that common. And he was saying that in order to get the best representation or the most accurate representation of the best team, having 5 best of 3s would be much better. Now, it would be interesting because
okay, you mean a best of 5 using best of 3. So you could win 3 best of 3s in a row and you win the series.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah. The great thing about that, he was saying, is that it would allow you to have more niche strategy, test more strategies. It would allow you to figure out your opponent much better. And they would be playing better League of Legends because they'd be way less nervous and all that
really
shit.
Like that. I love that a lot.
And then also, if you have subs that play certain champions, you could sub them in for one random game. For a random game for a niche strategy. So there's room to do this, but you don't have the room to do this in a singular best of 5. Obviously, this is going to come at a cost for, say, a Riot, whatever. But what I said was, I guarantee you, if they did this over, say, a long weekend, like a 3-day event, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or something, or sorry, 5 days over it has to be 5 days, literally 5 days, potentially. Yeah. If you did this over like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, whatever it is, in the holidays or whatever, that would get sold out every single day, period.
Oh, that's not a problem. So there's 2 aspects you need to think about here, okay, right? Performance and entertainment, okay? I mean, I guess they're sort of tied in a way, but do you think that finals format that shows the highest level of performance because people can take more risks? I mean, I guess there would be more entertaining as well because you would see more crazy things. People would be less
100%, man.
The current format, they're more risk adverse, right?
I mean, the only thing that I was thinking was, okay, you think about Riot and their intention with Worlds as an event. I'm pretty sure it was known as a marketing tool. Correct. Worlds at the end of the day was a marketing tool.
The whole esports department, yeah.
Esports was a marketing tool.
Yeah.
It wasn't really designed to make money. But they're not going to be like, at some point they probably got to draw a line, right? I mean, maybe not because they're that big that it doesn't really matter. But how do you draw the line? Because that's going to cost them way more in production costs. Think about it. Broadcast talent, hiring the venue for an extra few days, which is incredibly expensive. Like that whole process, that whole thing is going to cost a lot more money. Maybe again, they're worried about.
That's your job to figure it out. I mean, how do you monetize that better? I mean, at the end of the day, you've got extra potentially, let's say 3 hours,
extra assets.
3 times 4. Yeah, you have extra 12 hours of broadcast time. I mean, let's say it's like 5 games ago to the 5. You have, you can figure that out. If anything, you could maybe figure out maybe that's actually better commercially.
Potentially. Anyway, I just found that as an interesting little point there because I'm with you. The team that generally wins game 1 and 2, it's very likely that they're going to win the whole series. Like it felt like Suning, and that's why, by the way, the game 4 quality was trash. They were just beaten down. Man.
Yeah,
Suning were beaten down in game 4.
You're hardcore focusing those first 2 games, and the way you lose them, like they're like so close, So close. Well, actually, no. Well, Suning won game 2, right? So, it's like the third one. It's just like the kick, man. It's like,
yeah.
So
the team that wins that third
one. That was so close, dude. Like that was, they were all really close.
Yeah.
And then it's like game 4 is like, fuck, we're down 2-1. It's like, oh, this is just so hard. Like one bad thing happens wrong in that game. It's like, it's just so hard to bring it back,
Yeah. That's how I felt. It felt like in game 4, one thing happens, and then you're just like, all right, get me out. Like they're subconsciously just like, I don't want to play. I can't bring myself to win this game. Just mentally.
Because then you got to win another game after that with the same amount of energy. It's a lot,
So I just found that really interesting, and it's something that I think League need to consider, just in terms of both. I'm thinking more of just the competitive integrity.
Do you think that they should also do that for the regional finals as well, or just the world final?
Probably just the world final, I reckon.
Yeah, I think so as well. So
I do think
NALCS and LEC.
But I do think that the rest of the format's actually trash as well. Like the fact that we had to sit through again, Damwon versus DRX again in a best of 5, even though we've already seen that domestically in LCK, that's a joke. Imagine how angry you would be if you were DRX. It's like, what the fuck? Like, we're with a 2nd seed, and then like we'd already versed them and lost to them. It's proven that, we've seen that. Why do we have to go through this again? No one wants to watch Korea versus Korea again. They should make it so the Koreans, they don't verse each other to the final again, and the Chinese teams don't verse each other to the final. Wouldn't it have been much more exciting instead of, so it was, what were the teams versing? It was
China versus Korea on the opposite sides of the bracket.
Yeah, that would have been so much better, right? If Korea didn't verse each other. Yeah. That would have been possible, right? They could have just had...
I mean, you would have to go back down to the group stages of, it comes down to the group. I mean, at the end of the day, Worlds starts with the group stages. It's like you're in, it's like there's 16 teams, top 2 from each, and then they get seeded into, A versus the winner versus the first place versus second place, first place versus second place. Well, I mean, I think double elimination needs to be the way it goes,
Yeah,
like
double elimination.
Work your way back up. Actually, how does the NBA do it? NBA, you don't have second chances, do you?
I actually don't know. I actually really don't know.
NBA is the same thing. They're pretty much all similar to the final series. I think they're best of 5s or 7s.
I know Monty and Thorin talk about this in they do like a, what is it, Summoning Insight? Is that what it's called, or something like that? Yeah, they have an episode talking about they talk about Worlds format. I mean, they know a lot more than Worlds formats than us. I don't really know anything about formats and just competition formats. I don't know. But they were talking about a certain style of format where it is a double elim, where there's a loser's bracket. The loser bracket. And then that way as well, they'll pretty much basically guarantee on average the same amount of games anyway. But then also what you remove,
a lot of games,
what you remove is those pointless games. You remove the pointless games where, like, we had FlyQuest versus Top Esports, where FlyQuest, that was Top Esports had already secured first seed, I believe, and FlyQuest were already out. Even if FlyQuest won that game, it didn't mean anything. So what happened?
Which is crazy to think at the best, most prestigious event of the world, there's literally useless games. That should be only for regular seasons.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And think about that. It just makes no sense. The fact that exists is stupid. Because again, Top Esports, they probably don't want to give away. How do you know they just don't want to give any more strategy? They don't want to show anything more about what they have in store. And how's that? The one game they happened to lose to an average team, it was the one that didn't matter. This is weird to me. Anyway.
So another takeaway, Curtis, from the grand final series is sort of a topic that we brought up. We actually quickly spoke about this as we were watching as well, because we actually caught ourselves. Because, we obviously in the podcast, we've been talking a lot about invisible narratives and that sort of stuff. We said, quote, so this was the game 3. And I'm very focused on jungle matchups, right? And then SOFM picked Graves, right? Into DWG's Canyon picked Graves into Sunin's top side, which was Jax, Nidalee, and Akali, right? And as Graves, that's impossible to play against. And just quoted from Champ Select, this game's just done. GG. Literally 20 minutes, impossible for DWG to win this. Sunin was going to win that.
That's what you literally said, yeah.
Literally said that. And it's like sort of been sarcastic, but sort of like serious in a way. I was probably like 80% serious, And then, we sort of I sort of caught myself saying, I said this in solo queue a lot as well, which is, and no, because then what happened is that team, they didn't win. It's like, well, come on, it's not impossible, clearly. And this is the highest level of competition where you would think that it should be just based one-off draft, right? And I was like, well, I this is actually a mental block that I have in solo queue. stuff like you would tell yourself, like scaling, like, oh, like the enemy team like wins like one early team fight. This game's just over GG because the enemy team's already outscaled us because we're the early game team and we should have won the early game fight, which is true. That's true. Yes, you should have still won, but the game, trust me, the enemy team will still make mistakes, and they have so many times. I always say this to people. Curtis, how many times have you beaten a level 16 Kassadin?
Yeah, it happens quite often.
Quite often. But
well, I would say it's like it's not 100% GG. I would also say quite often. I would say 50-50. I would say honestly 50-50.
Okay, 50-50. But in my head or in anyone's head or even in the chat, it's like this game's just over GG FF. And yeah, it's probably incredibly difficult to beat a Kassadin that makes it through the early to mid game.
Even if it's 20%. Even if it's 20% of the time, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the fact that it's possible. I mean, you're spot on, man. Like, because I remember like hearing that as well. Because I thought the same. I was like, holy shit! Imagine playing Graves into Akali. Akali blocks a lot of auto attacks. You can't really do much to a Graves. Akali, I'm sorry, you can't do much to Akali. Akali is hard countered by hard CC. Akali's countered by hard CC. Graves offers none of that. Yes, the smoke screen is a little bit annoying. Yes, there's a bit of AoE with the Q and the ultimate, whatever. But that's not really what's going to shut down an Akali. And traditionally, Nidalee is also quite good into Graves. I don't know the specifics of why. You can maybe riff on that later. And then also Graves, again, more auto attack based champion into a Jax. You know, not too, yeah. Now, in that game, Bin died to a level 3 Graves gank, I believe, randomly. He hadn't died to a gank, I believe, in most of the series, and he happened to die that game to Canyon's Graves at like level 3 randomly. Whether it was through poor wave management or whatever the reason. And that just happens. Human error. You know, games are chaotic. He might have lost focus for a split second. For whatever reason, he died to that gank. And that's all Graves needed to get through the entire early laning, or the early game, and scale nicely into mid-game and, you know, work with his team and get shit done. And I think you're spot on in saying this happens in solo queue.
Well, of course. I mean, you think of it, it can happen at the highest level of competition. It's happening in, trust me, your gold, platinum, you know, diamond, you know, games, you know, and
you know how toxic that is, Nathan. The fact that even us, people that have played the game for this long,
we've done it. We've beaten level 16 Kassadins. We know it's possible, but we still have these narratives.
Our default response is like GG, oh, we can't win, or like, even if it's jokingly, like you said, even if you're saying it sarcastically in a weird way, deep down, there is an element of truth to it. You're thinking, holy shit, this is actually going to be a really hard game to win. But like,
it's easy for me to just give up because then it's like, it protects my ego, that sort of stuff. I mean, because remember you brought up the other day as well, as you randomly came to me and said, Nathan, I noticed today, like, people in my Discord server, everyone's so mentally weak when it comes to solo queue.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like everyone, like, everyone gets tilted off like one question mark or like one death. Like, a common problem with people in my Discord is that they die once and then they check out mentally. They die once and then they like can't bounce back. Whether it's because they feel like they know what the mistake is and they need to go into the review, or, you know, they messed up and that's want to go to the next game, or they just think it's jungle diff and they have to go to the next game quickly. Whatever reason it is.
Well, for me, when I die like early and it's like a really dumb mistake, I have such high expectation because the way that I play the game, it's like I have to play perfectly or I don't deserve to win, you know? So then I'll check out mentally. It's like, well, like I shouldn't win this game because I didn't play perfectly. But that's not me blaming my teammates. That's me just having super high expectations for myself, you know? Yeah,
but you got to walk that line. You got to walk that fine line.
I mean, you shouldn't. It's not even a fine line, because I think it's like you die. You the next thing, instead of thinking about that play, you're moving instantly on to the next thing, and you're thinking, what's the next best decision to make right now? What's the next best decision to make given the current situation in the game? And when I repeat that to myself over and over, and I'm like, I have to be also 110% focused in that game as well. I can't be tilted. Then I generally win games that I shouldn't have won a lot of the time.
Well, this actually reminds me a lot of the work we did with Chippies in 2017 with Jono and Chippies. And Chippies had a problem with not being able to let go. He was a top laner for one of the rosters that I coached in 2017. He was an exceptional top laner at the time in terms of a carry. He was a carry. He was very dominant. He used to play champions like Camille, Fiora, things like that. And he had such high expectations of himself that when he made a mistake, his default response was to just be like, oh, like he was so angry and he wouldn't be able to let it go. And then it would influence all of the other decisions that would happen in that game. Like it would be a flow-on effect. If he died early to a gank at level 3, like he would have to make up for it by either overcompensating, he has to get another solo kill back, or he has to do something crazy, or he has to get a gank from his jungler. There was always something he had to do to make up for it. But that's not the right mentality. That's not the right approach. It's more about, like you said, Nathan, is you got to, okay, what is the situation right now? What is my role in the team? What do I have to do next? What's the next objective? What's my power spike? How am I going to get there?
Right there. What's my role to win this game? Is it to just not die? Do I have to play weak side? Is it to just protect a certain lane? Is it to literally just be a literally ward bot for my team? That's the key thing. Because remember, everyone thinks of winning games in League of Legends as carrying the montage plays like 10-0, 10-3. Because what is your score on a lot of your Orianna games? That when you climb like when you're top 10?
At the moment, like I'm ranked 10 or something, and most of my Orianna games, I'm like 2-0 something. Like yeah, 2-0-10. I had one that was recently 1-0-15. Like I am not. I mean, some games, yes, I am the sole carrier of the team, and other games I'm not. I'm happy to take a back seat because Could you
put a ratio on that out of curiosity? Like, what do you reckon it is? Like games where you're clearly just hard carrying in terms of kills and damage, and games where you're playing. I mean, you're still doing work, but it's like you're doing well, but you're not like this is just like on 1v9 in this game.
Honestly, the way I play Orianna, I very rarely see myself as a 1v9 carry.
1 in 10.
Very rarely. I would say 70% of games I see myself as a facilitator for the jungler or someone else.
All right, maybe Orianna's a bad example. What about Zed when you're learning Zed?
Again, it's not like I never view myself as a 1v9 on Zed. Well, Zed's not a 1v9 champion. The way I viewed it was like, okay, I got to be strong, but I also have to have another strong member on my team because Zed can't 1v9 a team fight. I need a strong side lane or a strong jungler on my team. That's how I view mid lane at all, actually, to be honest. Outside of Cassiopeia and maybe Azir, and that's it. I think maybe Cassiopeia and Azir out of the champs I play anyway. I always, even like Aurelia, actually, maybe Aurelia, Azir, and Cassiopeia. I feel like every other champ outside of those that are in my pool, I'm playing for the team. When I play Galio, when I play Twist of Fate, when I play Ori, when I play Zed, even when I play things like Fizz and things like that, I never view myself as a 1v9 carry. I am getting someone, my goal is to get someone else ahead. And it happens to be great in this meta because a lot of junglers are playing carry junglers. We see like Graves, we see Nidalee, Kindred, Evelyn. We see a lot of like carry-oriented junglers. And if I can get them fed, I know we can win the game. And that's okay. It's okay not to be the carry, which actually, before we go into the next thing, I just want to reiterate one last thing, Nathan. You know how we're talking a bit about we're catching ourselves, sort of things that we say when watching Worlds. What are some things that you hear people say when you're doing your coaching, your soul to whatever it is? Like, how can people know if they have this sort of mentality towards the game? What are some things that you would hear them say?
So things that they say that, again, it's hard. Like people from the things that, the example that I used, right? When I said that when I die, I feel like that I need to play perfectly to climb the solo queue ladder. And if I'm not playing perfectly, then I'm like, well, what's the point in playing the rest of this game, right? Like 110% focused. That's not something that I really have with my coaching clients. It's more them. It's like they actually need to take that first. It's actually good to have that responsibility, taking responsibility. It's like, we talk about Dopa's mindset when he plays solo queue. He feels like he's like a gladiator, he's like going in there, like his life is very precious because if you die in real life, you're dead, right? He's like fully 100% switched on, and he's not putting down his shield and his sword like it feels like in a gladiator fight. Like he's very, very, very focused, and he understands that he needs to again play perfectly, but it's not like when you die, it's like that's still like you can revive in League of Legends, you can still be a gladiator.
Well, I spoke about that in my video recently. I said, you have to view each death as the single most important thing and simultaneously
That's the key one. I love that.
not at all.
Not at all. Yeah.
So you got to view it's weird.
You can review it after. So it's like it's important in the review, but it's not important in the moment,
well,
right?
No, you got to view. No, the way I view it is you got to understand that sometimes one death is all it takes to lose a game. That's it. Sometimes.
I mean, I've done thousands of reviews where one death lost the game. Yeah.
Yeah, you literally you're playing a champion and you die to a level 3 gank, and that can literally maybe that was your own. Maybe that was one of those games, Nathan, where you had to play flawlessly. That was one of those is it the 40% ones where you had to play really well and it was all on you and you messed up. You died to that gank. You didn't track the jungler. That allowed the enemy Graves or Kindred to snowball, and then the game was over. There was no more entrances for you to win that game anymore. Well, okay, that may exist, and that is the case a lot of the time in League of Legends. But in the grand scheme of your improvement over thousands and hundreds and thousands of games, whatever it is, not hundreds of thousands, but hundreds and thousands of games.
You're playing hundreds of thousands of games. I don't think anyone in the world's got that.
That one death really doesn't mean anything because, again, you're going to keep playing. You're going to keep playing. Like, you dying that one time is not going to prevent you from queuing up again and playing again and then playing again. You're still going to be able to play again. So every death is important because, yes, that could be the game lost, but it's also not important because it's going to allow you to learn. You're going to grow from it. You're going to see why that happened in the first place, see the trends, and then you can implement that learning into the next game. So it's important and it's not in the grand scheme of your improvement over a long period of time. So you got to find that balance. And this is where you got to find the balance between taking responsibility for losses, but not letting that responsibility be a burden. You can't let that responsibility weigh too heavy on your shoulders because if you let it weigh too heavy, you're not going to be able to let it go. You're not going to be able to let that death go and move on to the next play. And I think that's where Chippy's was.
That's why I definitely struggle with that as well. It's like, because you can always, everything else that happens in that game, you can always bring it back to, well, if I didn't die, then that wouldn't have happened. It's like, then if I didn't die, I would have this item. I'll be stronger. I'd have more gold. I'll have higher levels.
It's so easy. And it feels so good to think like that. It feels so good to think, what if?
Well, because it makes sense. It's like, it's a very little thing you can tell yourself in your head. It's like, okay, that makes sense why this game's so difficult. Or this makes sense why I can stop trying because I already lost the game 5-10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And it's hard to try for an entire game for 30-40 minutes, especially when there's been so many mistakes.
Hard.
It's very difficult. It's a skill you need to learn.
This actually makes so much sense, Nathan. I just figured this out with Chippies. So Chippies, the only reason he had this problem is because he felt like he had to be the carrier of that team. He wanted to be the carrier of the team. Yeah. He felt like if he wasn't carrying, because he didn't trust his bot lane that year, remember?
Yeah.
Chippies did not trust his bot lane. He was a top lane. He did not trust his bot lane. So he felt like he had to get ahead. He had to be the carrier. And if he didn't get ahead, they were going to lose the game. This is all.
So he had to do crazy things, yeah.
Yeah, this was all a defense.
He had to go for solo kills and he would take risky things even though he knew the jungler might be around. He's like, I got to go for this anyway.
He had to do it because he didn't trust, or he either wasn't comfortable getting carried, whether it's his ego or something, or he didn't trust his bot lane. I know that year for a fact he did not trust his bot lane.
Yeah, we knew that.
And I feel like that makes so much sense when you actually think about it. And this is why you got to go into the deep work. My next video coming out, or probably at the same time as this podcast, is about invisible narratives and how to tackle invisible narratives. And I actually talk a little bit about that. One of the things I talk about how to utilize a preseason is actually listing out all of your invisible narratives and your mental blocks. This is the time. This is the time during the preseason to set yourself up for success in season 11 is to really think about what are some of these things holding you back. Like this, Nathan, you never would have, if we hadn't had this conversation during Worlds, whatever, maybe you never would have caught yourself and you would have found yourself giving up in games where maybe they could have been winnable.
Something I consciously need to work on. It's like even though this is a scaling team and we might have a bad early game, it's like I'm still trying super hard. I'm still trying to figure out a way to win the game. I'm understanding my role more in my games. It's like, well, I don't really need to do much. I don't need to do it for a risky gank. When it's like, well, I can win in other avenues. And when you're more relaxed in a game, we like just chill out. You're not rushed and hurrying. Things like ganks, like my ganks are so much cleaner when I'm just relaxed and chilling because I know this is either a good gank or a bad gank. I always say one of my mottos is the harder you force, the quicker you lose, and the more patient you are, the faster you win. And it's so true in League of Legends. You've probably consciously mastered that concept on Oriana.
I have on Oriana, yeah.
Yeah.
But that actually makes a lot of sense because that's how Showmaker plays.
Yeah.
Showmaker in solo queue is so patient.
Got it. Yeah.
He's not what you would think he is at all. When you watch Showmaker play,
he's like arguably the best player in the world.
Yeah, pretty much the best player in the world. And he's like so patient, dude. The way he plays is like he never forces shit. He's just like he plays. That's what the way I say it. Kind of, I'm trying to say the same thing what you're saying, but I say he's proactively reactive.
Got it. Proactively reactive.
That's what I say.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's not being reactive because he's a bitch or because he's scared or he doesn't know what to do. He's being reactive because he knows that's the most optimal play in this situation.
Well, he knows his limits very well as well, you know? So, I mean, he's champion mastery. I mean, he's definitely very, very good. It's not like you can tell someone, be proactively reactive, you'll be Showmaker, you know?
Yeah, no. It's something you refine over time. You need champion mastery. This actually leads me to the point, probably one of the most fun topics we mentioned in that podcast, the last episode that did not record, so I had this guy again on the Discord talk a little bit about main character theory, and I believe Saber XFSN Saber, he has a YouTube channel,
ADC stuff, right?
Yeah, AD carry stuff, and someone linked me this video of his a while ago talking about, this guy Saber. He talks about this theory he calls main character theory, and essentially what it is he believes most of the players, I'd say most is quite fair. Most players within solo queue have some weird invisible narrative where they believe that they need to be the sole carry of every game to win. Like, in order to climb, they need to be the carry every game. Like, they don't know how to get carried. And the example he used was Dopa. And Dopa was playing a game of Fizz. And in this specific example, it was like a mid to late game team fight as Fizz. And the rest of his team died, and it was only him and Aphelios. His Aphelios and his team, which was very fair at the time, and it was basically a 2v5 situation. Now, generally, a Fizz will want to, I think it was like 2v4. It's like a 2v4 situation. And there was a situation where he could have actually gone onto the enemy AD carry and dove the enemy AD carry and like popped him. And then it would have turned into a 2v3. But what he realized is that if he did that, he wouldn't have been able to peel around his AD carry and play around the Aphelios.
Because that's not Fizz's identity at all, is it?
Yeah, no, not at all. And he wouldn't have been able to play around Aphelios' turrets because Aphelios had his turrets down. So he realized in this moment that if I just sit next to the Aphelios, let them come to us and kind of, create space. And I believe one in that team fight as well, he throws out the ultimate, gets a chunk that instantly backs up back to the Aphelios. And he plays Peel Fizz in a way. He understood his role in this specific team fight was not to be a carry, not to be a 1v9.
That's specific, that's probably never going to happen. That's probably not going to happen for another 10, 20 games. That specific moment he identified his role, again, going for he's not the main character, he's a side character.
In that moment, yeah. You're not going to be, some games you are going to be the main character. Some you are.
Well,
some
especially
you are
Fizz specifically. That's why I love that Fizz example, because Fizz everyone knows Fizz, he just goes and one-shots the AD carry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you have to adapt. And that's the thing, League. You have to be like water in a game, like Bruce Lee. You have to be adaptable. And I really like the point that Saber raises, is that I think it's spot on. I think so many people feel like they need to be like 9-0, 8-0, 7-0 to win a game in solo queue. I don't view it like that at all. I am just in that game to do my job as my character. And yes, some games I'm playing Oriana, given the way the comms pan out, given the way the game pans out, maybe I am the carry. Other games, maybe not. Maybe I get behind. And the way you need to think about it, the reason you may get behind in some situations is maybe the enemy make inefficient plays to get you behind. Maybe the jungler skips 3 camps to gank mid, you die or blow your flash or whatever, or have to use all your mana or whatever, or you get chunked. But then your jungler is getting a massive camp lead over the enemy jungler, ends up being 2 levels up. Now, in that situation, you might not be the carry anymore. Maybe you just have to accept reality and allow your jungler to carry, because the enemy jungler made an inefficient play, which allows your jungler to be the carry. Or sometimes the enemy support will roam mid, go down 1 or 2 levels, or get his own AD carry killed for going for this roam to get you behind, and which your AD carry is the carry. that's why I love Oriana in solo queue as well, because she's so flexible. You can do everything. You can be facilitator, you can create space, you can peel, you can be the carry, you can play the front to back, you can play pick, you can do whatever you want. But that is such an important concept to understand. Very important concept to understand. And have you seen that in your own coaching class, Nathan, at all or not?
I'll definitely agree with what he said. That he thinks most players think that they have to be the main character.
Yeah.
I mean, just from my experience coaching Low Elo, Curtis, just end of story. There's very few times where I see someone back off a fight. It's always, okay, fight's happening, I have to just engage here, and I just have to play mechanically perfectly.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, oh, okay, like my role here, like this, like I can't really do much here. Let's just either try and backping my team, because sometimes players actually encourage bad plays from their teammates as well. And sometimes they blame their teammates in the fight. Well, it's like, well, this was actually pretty bad for them in the first place. You shouldn't have done this.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually such a massive one, man. Like now that you raise that, I haven't thought about this in a while, but okay. I've had a few coaching clients where they will complain about either not receiving ganks or their teammates not helping them or doing something else. What happens is that I can literally break down why it was actually good for them not to help you. There's some situations where the jungler isn't incentivized or shouldn't come to your lane.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah, I've literally said that. It doesn't make sense.
Whether you're trading
he's
poorly,
actually shooting himself in the foot by trying to help you. Specific situation is like he's doing Rift Herald and you're taking like a heavy trade, you know?
I mean, there's so many situations where the jungler should just not even come anywhere near you. And sometimes that's just the way the game, that's the way the cookie crumbles. And you got to be able to adapt, period. You got to be able to adapt. And I just found that really interesting. So if that sounds like you, if you feel like you maybe have that mental block or that invisible narrative where you feel like you have to be the carry every game, I think then something that you may need to refine is the ability to be able to identify your role in every game and
be a side character. You don't have to be the main character.
Put your ego aside.
The Batman and the Robin. At the end of the day, Robin still gets he gets credit for being Robin, you know, even though he's not Batman. Is that a good analogy, Curtis?
I actually haven't seen Batman and Robin.
He still wins. You know, he still wins at the end of the day, but he's Robin.
Or the way I would probably view it even more so is like coaching staff with a team in a weird way.
They went like at the end of the day, the coaching staff of, you know, the people behind the scenes that we might not see of DWG, you know,
yeah, they do a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, I love that. Anyway, interesting. Now, I mean, I had one more point here.
Yeah, let's do one more topic, then we'll go into Q&A.
All right. This is a little bit of a rant. I mean, okay, where this came up was, so obviously, those of you who listen to this, you may know a little bit about my background, but I was a head coach for 3 years. And obviously, being a head coach for 3 years, you watch a lot of scrims, right? You watch a lot of scrims. And I was actually had this conversation with you once, Nathan. We're saying how many scrims total have we watched?
Then we worked it out. It's thousands. It's about 3,000, I think we said. 3,000 scrims.
A ridiculous amount of scrims. Now, what happens?
7 years, yeah.
Yeah, even before that. So I've been a head coach for three years, and I was a player before that, and then we were just played all the time and just rewatch scrims and things like that for such a long time. Now, what happens when you're doing something for so long, it just becomes the norm. Like whatever you're doing just becomes the norm because you've done it so much. Think about an example I use is like, say you work at think about your workplace. Doesn't matter where you work, whatever your workplace is. And maybe when you first joined that workplace, you were like really inquisitive about why things are done the way they are. You're like, oh, why does that guy do it that way? He must have a reason for it, but like, what's the reason for it? Like, why is he doing it? You're very inquisitive, like asking, you're probing everything. Like when you go into a new workplace or when you get a new job, you're probably thinking the same. Why am I doing it this way? And you're always thinking, surely I could do this more efficiently, or surely I could do it in a way that's going to save time. Like you're just questioning things. But soon you'll realize as you keep working, it's like it just becomes the norm. And at some point, you just don't question it anymore. It's like, this is the way it's done. This is the way it is. It is what it is. And you just do it. And that's what happened to me with coaching in reference to scrims. Now, what happened in 2017?
Wait, so you only know that because you've stepped away from it now.
Yeah,
but
the point I'm trying to make.
Moment, you couldn't describe it like that, could you?
Yeah, no, in the moment, I never would have had this thought process. And I'll get to it in a second. But yeah, what I'm trying to get at is that I've been out of it now. And now thinking back about what we did in scrims and scrim culture now and the way practice is done, it really doesn't make any sense. And the reason I actually thought of this was because I remember in 2017, we had a performance director come in. And I remember the first day he watched scrims. He'd never seen esports. He had never even seen a scrim.
He barely know what League of Legends was, right?
Didn't even know what League was. And he asked me, he's like, why is it done like this? Why do you, like, he was observing the post-game review and everything.
The review, right? Specifically the review. Yeah.
It was the review. And he was like, why is it done like this? Surely you could do it better like this. And I was like, yeah, shut up, old man. Like, what do you know? You know nothing about esports. Like, go back to
typical egotistical Curtis, ignorant Curtis.
Yeah, go back to your old school company, whatever. Anyway, and it got me thinking, okay, now, like, what do I agree or don't disagree with in terms of scrim culture? Now, one of the things some of you may know who have done scrims before, the way it worked in our region, and it was similar in other regions as well, was that you would do blocks of either 3 or 5, and in between each game, generally there was between a 13 to 15 minutes review time. Right, so you could do whatever you wanted in this 15-minute time, whether you send the players off to review individually, whether you do team review, whether you do zero review. The players just go off and drink water and dick around and go to practice or whatever you want to do. And it got me thinking, like, isn't 15 minutes incredibly short period? Isn't that such an incredibly short period of time considering like what we're trying to improve here? Like, think about this. Let's get very detailed here. You finish a scrim, and generally what happens? What happens in a scrim? Someone's pissed off or someone's really happy. Either one or the other. There's no in between. It's very rare that you have 5 level-headed, agnostic people that are just like, oh, GG.
Well, all right, unless you won, Curtis.
Oh, no, if you win, they're usually happy.
Yeah, that's right.
They're
yeah, sorry, level-headed. Yeah, so it's just like, okay, that's the game. This is what we take from it. Yeah,
no, there's
emotions after every scrim.
Yeah, everyone's emotional. Everyone's emotional, win or loss. If they win, they're usually happy. Ha, you see that thing with that guy entered? That was hilarious. That guy just tried to dive me. Come check this out. Like, come look at this guy. Check out this solo kill. Like, this sort of shit happens at every level. Or they lose and they're pissed off. And the first thing they do when they jump out of that game is literally, as soon as the Nexus, as the Nexus is literally exploding, they take off the headset, say, hey, Calvin, why'd you die? Like, how did you get caught in that dragon fight? Why did you die there? Why did you overstay there? Like, it's some like really, like, not like sarcastic, but it's some like passive aggressive, semi-toxic comment. That's just the way.
Well, you know, the thing about that is that, well, let's say, for example, for Calvin knows that's coming eventually, right? And this is what would creates really toxic team culture. He knows it's coming because he's done it so many times, that person. And then it's like he's waiting for it. And then as he's saying it, because remember, people, especially, you know, when all the comms go quiet, you know, it's like when we're starting to, like, it's obviously the game's lost. Everyone's really just thinking about what they're going to say after the game. You know, everyone's just waiting for the Nexus to explode to literally get into it straight away. Versus, which I think is what your proposal is, Curtis, is that reviews there should be no talking for the next 5 minutes.
There literally should be not a single word said. What should happen is everyone take a minute or two, get a bit of water, stretch your legs, come back to the computer, get into individual review. Individual review, period. Whether it's micro, what are you focusing on your micro, you're focusing on your wave manipulation, your jungle tracking, whatever, your point of view, individual review. Team play shit aside. Whether it's the way you're focusing on that you wanted to learn more about the matchup, whatever you want to do for, say, 5-7 minutes. Then slowly break out into duos and trios, whether it's the bot lane now review stuff together, or the mid jungle look at a few skirmishes or ganks together, or the top and the jungle. You break out into duos and trios and go through situations. Then that gives slowly, so what's the great thing about this? They've had time to cool off. They've had time to look at how they contributed to the game's result, win or loss. They've then been able to get into the nitty gritty and get very, very specific. Then when they come to that conversation at 7 minutes, whether it's something around a poor rotation heading to a Rift Herald fight, whether it's the way someone didn't flash in a team fight or whatever it was, or poor itemization, at least they've calmed down a little bit. They've been able to see how literally what actually happened in the game very logically, because they know they've been able to review the game and see what happened. And they're able to see how they contributed to the win or loss. Then you have a much higher quality discussion. You can have much higher quality discussion at that point. I would also go further and say after that, after they break out into 2 or 3, that's going to be another, at least, another 7 minutes or whatever, 5 to 7 minutes. Then the coach comes in and maybe goes through a few things. And again, we're already pushing past 15 minutes by far. I mean, if you're doing 7 minutes, that's 14 plus a 2-minute break, already like 16 something. And then there's probably the team, maybe the coach goes over 1 or 2 macro plays, some team fights. Then we go over some drafting discussion for the next game, prep for the next game. We're already heading up to 20 to 25 minutes. Then, not even on top of this, one of the most important jobs of a coach is to assess the quality of the communication. Go through specific moments and talk about, here in this moment, Joe, a minute before this objective, you should be talking about what you want to happen at this next objective, or you should already be calling off that objective saying that you don't want it, because you need to tell your team what you want this far. Like, this is where communication you need to get very, very in depth with communication, what is and isn't said. Now,
and when did we ever do that, Curtis? Like, go back to a recording, and then you'd listen to specific moments, because it really comes back to he said, she said. How many times did you hear, oh, I said that. Oh, I didn't hear you.
And I think I don't know if I mentioned this on another podcast, like the most toxic form of communication is assumed communication. Have I spoken about this on the podcast yet? Or was it on the previous episode?
Maybe not. Just talk about it.
Okay, go it again. Well, the most toxic form of very important. The most toxic form of communication is assumed communication, where I might say me and you are mid jungle, and I say, Nathan, like mid's frozen. Now, mid's frozen to you might mean, oh, I got to gank mid, I got to help mid, or whatever it is. It might mean something to you. But for me, I might just be giving you that information. But because maybe you interpreted the way I said it, the volume I said it, or the time I said it, maybe you were nearby when I said it, I don't know. It meant something to you. And then after the game, you make a decision. I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? What is Nathan doing? Why is he here? Like, why did you break my freeze? Or why did you come gank mid here? And we got counter ganks. And then you're like, well, I didn't want to do this, but I did because you said mid was frozen. And then it gets crazy. This is the quality, the level of discussion and the quality of level of review that you need to get into. Like, this is all stuff that you can't go over in 15 minutes. Yes, you're not going to be able to go over every single little detail, but there's still, you can hone in only on communication maybe for 15 minutes between the entire team. And which actually brought me to my other thing, was that maybe optimal practice is that 2 days a week, we go over only laning phase stuff, draft-oriented stuff. The next day, we go over only communication. The next day, we go only over team fighting and skirmishing. And then the final day before we go on stage on the weekend is we don't talk about macro, nothing. We literally just play our compositions out and learn how to play our matchups. Or I don't know. All I'm saying is that, there has to be something done here to refine the quality of scrim practice, because the way I see it, it's an absolute shit show.
There's not much learning going on.
Very little, very okay.
Well, they're not squeezing nearly maybe 10% of what they could be doing.
Okay, if you think about the coach's job, or think about what's the purpose of scrims, Nathan? The purpose of scrims is what? To get the most amount of your goal should be to get the most amount of value or practice or knowledge
from each game. Well,
from each game.
You could go back. It's like you probably forget. I'd say teams forget this. It eventually comes into just trying to show that I'm just better than my teammates, and then I can get picked up by another team. Like usually, I think sometimes it's just lost, Curtis, where it's like I'm just trying to protect myself so I just don't get fired. I mean, at the end of the day, what it should be, Curtis, is that we're trying to be the best team possible to win the NLCS or LEC.
Oh yeah,
from my experience, I think it moves so far away from that, Curtis.
It moves so far away from let's be the best possible team.
It's like, how can I survive today? How can I protect my ego today? Or how can I not get flamed today? So then I can survive just another day. That's actually where it can get to, especially the bottom tier teams.
Or or even like, how do I look good so I don't get replaced next split?
Or
because things get replaced.
Or I can just play good enough, or I play safe enough.
And how do I play safe enough?
I don't want to try and hard for the team where like I can just not make mistakes, and it's like, oh well, he's not like in.
Or how can I play well enough so that my teammates don't flame me for talking to my girlfriend tonight?
Yeah. I don't know if I sidetrack you, but that's my initial reaction to like where Scrims actually eventually moved to. But I
think you're spot on. I think we actually go so far away from the fact that we're using this time to become the best team possible.
Well yeah, because there's no process after a review.
Yeah, the processes are so lackluster.
It's just as you said, going back to your analogy, where it's like this is just the way we do it because this is just the way it is. No one's questioning it.
If you think about it even more like granularly, it's like, okay, we are going to practice as a team only a certain amount of times this year. Like we're only going to have a certain amount of scrim blocks. Now, if you think about it, in the highest level of competition, your goal as a team should be, it should be like this. If we can use our practice time more efficiently than other teams in the league over a long period of time, we should be able to overtake them, even if they're better than us right now. If we're getting 80, 90% of the learning out of every single scrim, and we have very little wasted time in terms of we have great quality discussion, we don't tilt each other, asking high quality questions, we're going straight to the point, we're honing in on specific things and not scattering our brains, all these things, then over the course of weeks, months, years, we are going to be a much better team than our counterpart. But the people don't view it like that, Nathan. We're so short-term. We're so incredibly short-term. But this is where the great leadership and coaching staff really needs to come into play.
Absolutely. Yeah. To try and get us to get away from the short-term and thinking bigger picture.
Let's not think about
today. Let's not think about this scrim block and how your teammates may have played bad. Let's think about where do we want to be in 3 months.
It's also like ties it back into the death thing. Each scrim block is the most important scrim block and the least important at the same point in time.
Absolutely.
It's the way you got to view it. Yes, it's important, but it's not at the same time. You got to have that same mentality. And so if I were to go back in time and be a coach, a head coach or assistant coach or whatever in an organization, I would spend so much time just straight up listening. I would actually just wouldn't say a word as a coach, let the head coach do their thing, whatever. I'd sit back and I'll just listen. And I would just listen and say, what is the purpose of that discussion? How could we get the learning from that discussion, which I can see the intention is good, but how could we get the learning from that discussion rather than taking 8 minutes for it? How could we get that down to 1 or 2 minutes? What sort of questions would we have to ask?
Who needs to be involved and who doesn't? Because how many times I've also seen situations, Curtis, where so after the scrim, a conversation just breaks out between two people, or either like some argument, or they could also be working together on something. And then let's say, or even the head coach starts saying something, but it's really only related to a couple of players. But then everyone feels like they're dragged into it, and then they're just sitting there, just wasting time.
So what the fuck am I doing here?
Let's say the top laner is just sitting there, just listening to this conversation. It doesn't really affect them.
This is why I love the breakout rooms. You do like 2 duos and trios. I think it's much better. It's so much harder unless you're doing an active like 5-man team fight where everyone needs to be aligned. That's not often. That's very rare in League of Legends. That's the case. Yeah, I mean, again, you could just listen to every single conversation, every single word said, because that matters. we're not just playing for the next 3 weeks. We're playing for a year.
Well,
We might be playing for 2 years.
Which is that's another whole issue, Curtis, in itself, I think, and the duration of teammates playing with each other.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's why rosters, I put a value on having the same roster for a long period of time, if possible. Right?
Which is not possible right now in the current climate.
Well, it's not possible right now, but I think coaching staff is definitely possible.
Yeah, definitely.
Coaching staff should be possible. But anyway, that I just feel like it'll be so interesting to see what the standard of practice is like in the future. Like if I go back into the pro scene, like obviously I've been talking to a few team like potential people internationally, and if I were to go back into the pro scene, what that would be like now. Has it changed? How much has it changed? Or is it still just trash like it has been for the last 7 years, 8 and 10 years? Super, super interesting. It'll be very interesting also if we were to fast forward 10 years from now, what does a scrim set look like, Nathan?
I would say it would look very different from how it looks today.
It'd be like, you won't even like know what you're listening to. It'd be like,
can you believe we did that?
That's what motivates me, dude. Even with my YouTube content, with you, right? It's like, how can I do this better? How can I get across what I'm saying in a more effective manner? Yeah,
the way I coached this year, like my past reflection, the last couple of weeks, days, I'm literally be like, yeah, I did that. Like I could have done that a lot better with the knowledge that I have. But I had to do that. You have to go through those learnings. The only reason you're bringing this up, Curtis, is because you had time. You did it. You had time now to reflect. And now you understand, okay, that was just done really poorly. But at that time, you thought that was the best way to do it because it's, again, that's what everyone else did. That's what you're told to do. This is the way Koreans did it. This is the way Chinese, LPL did it.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually. I wouldn't have been able to even come to these conclusions if I was in the shit. This is why I needed a year off. I mean, I needed a year off just to reflect, man. I was just getting fucked in every single day as a coach. Like, I was in the shit for so long.
It's like the pressure of like the splits ending soon. We got to like do short-term it's just a band-aid solution after band-aid solution.
And it's like, all right, new roster, new coaching staff, bang, 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 bang.
Really kicking from the team. Who's going?
It was so good to get out of it for a year, man. I'll be honest. Holy moly. And I just one last little thing before we go into the questions. I think this also stems for people doing like, just like reviews. Okay. The quality of the questions you should ask yourself doing your own reviews rather than how did what did my jungle do to fuck my lane? Or what did my jungle do to screw my lane? Or how, like, why was this a loser's queue game? Or like, just whatever it is. It's like, they also like, just, to be honest, I don't even ask questions. I think that's the first problem. They don't even ask questions. So there's asking a poor quality question. Then there's asking a great quality question. Then there's not asking questions at all. So I think most people in their reviews don't really ask questions because the sort of questions that you should be asking are things like, what did I do to contribute to this situation? What could I have done to prevent this sort of thing from happening? What variables did I not consider when heading into this? What variables could I have considered or could I have begun to think about in the loading screen? What could I have done to learn more about this matchup before? What do I need to learn more about next time in order to prevent this from happening? What could I have said or what could I have not said to tilt someone here?
Because write these down, man. This is gold, man, honestly. If everyone asks these questions after every game, because this only could be such a more pleasant experience. Now, there's no one's blaming anyone because everyone's like, well, I got to ask these questions after this game and whatever I'm doing here is not helping me.
Like, I actually had a game recently, by the way. This was super interesting. So I was playing with Gun Crab, right, in the bot lane. And, like, so this guy, he's like a pro player in our region. And I was playing, like, I like made some pretty, I'll say, because obviously support's my secondary role. I'm not amazing at support. And I'm playing in some high elo games, right? So I'm not a good support. I mean, I can do some. I can think my roaming's okay, but my laning as a support is actually not good at all. Now, sometimes when I lane with pro 80 carries, I can tell they get very frustrated
because you're not playing like their support, their main supports. Like, this guy's just trash.
Yeah, and I can understand that. And then like I could tell, like, and then what happened? Like, I missed position once, or maybe I went for a roam or whatever happened, or I didn't threaten hard enough so the enemy would be able to build a wave, and then he died. right? And I could tell he was really frustrated. He didn't type anything, but I could just tell, like, but the way he was pinging me, things like I could tell he's pissed off. But rather than me going on the defense and saying, fuck this guy, you know, like, why is he doing this, whatever, I actually took a much more empathic approach. I was like, I can understand why he thinks that. I can understand why he would feel like that. And I can understand why he'd be pissed off at me right now. And yes, it takes a while to get to that point, but I understand.
And what would the best thing for him to be? How would he frame it? He's like, okay, well, this guy's off role support. I shouldn't have any expectations for him.
Well, it's just like, managing your expectations and just being, just, and if he wants me to do something, type it. Like literally, like I mean, I don't know how to play the matchups because I don't play bot lane. How does he want? Does he want me to hard shove level 1? Does he not? Does he want me? What does he want me to do? And if he was really that desperate, then he could maybe say that. But then maybe most people think, oh, why do I have to do that? Why is it my responsibility to tell him how to play his role? But then that's
if you want to win the game, then he could help you play better by you doing that instead of you having worrying. It's like how frustrated is him. So it's like do you know why it's your responsibility? Because you can win the game by utilizing your teammates. What's going on, Curse? Is someone at our house?
No, I'm just looking like, what the hell is that on my? I'm looking at that. What is that on my shelf?
What?
Oh, never mind. I know what it is.
Okay.
Don't worry. Yeah. Spot on. Anyway. Q&A.
Right, so
we don't have to...
Usually, all right, because let's do a quick break. I got to quickly change the battery in the camera. Oh, look, we got webcams. The webcam's nicely plugged into my computer, getting power from my computer, so I'm all good. All right, so actually, no, but I actually have to test this out. So let's see if this works.
Oh, shit.
All right, this is new technology of the Broken by Concept BBC question and answer time.
So you're going to bring it up. Oh, my God.
Look at that, man.
All right, so Nathan, explain to the Spotify listeners what's going on right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I've just got up the question on the screen for our YouTube people. I'm going to read it out. So this is a question from, he said Curtis, but I think he was just thinking of you because his name's Derek in the email. So I think that might be a mishap. Or maybe he's just confused about what his name is. Anyway, he says, hey guys, just curious, but would you guys say there is a good routine for the league at each ELO? Whether it be a combination of playing games, reviewing, watching our videos, watching Korean challenges, etc., or should a gold and diamond player, for example, have the exact same routine, and what would that be?
I actually am going to answer this question differently than what I did last time, Nathan.
Okay.
So I've got a video again that's coming out probably the same time as this podcast, and I talk about the 3 phases of learning a champion. And in the 3 phases of learning a champion, you have the first 10 games, which is just like the basic fun zone. Everything's fun, cool, calm, collected. You have the second zone, which is the tilt zone, where from games 10 to 50, it gets very, very difficult. But you're not quite yet at champion mastery yet. And then you have like kind of like 50, 60 plus games where you're nearing champion mastery. All the basics are muscle memory, and you're starting to really hone in on the 1%ers. Now, what I've realized this with myself as well is that you get so much more value from watching one tricks and high elo players when you've already mastered that champion. When you're already into phase 3.
You're going to see things that you can't see at phase 1. You know, you're just learning the champion because you just overlook things.
Or someone like the average silver or gold player watching Dopa is going to get they're basically going to get 20% of the value. You know, because they're not seeing what he's doing. They don't understand.
So it's still, like, in my opinion, like silver, like, I mean, anyone below gold needs to be playing the game.
Yeah,
like
I
80% of the time.
I would literally I even go further than that. I say from
just
iron to one,
watching
you don't need to watch a VOD.
Yeah,
I say just don't overcomplicate the game.
I think you're right, because I think that our content confuses the shit out of people, especially when I see. I mean, I sometimes try and, I mean, it's very difficult, but I sometimes try and put myself in my shoes watching my content, but even other content, because I've recommended videos from Skill Captain, Pro Guards and stuff pop up. I'm like, this is not something I want people to be focusing on at all, and it's something like even like wave management, or like who cares about that in silver,
me,
gold. You can't even control your character, you know?
Well, for me, I don't talk about wave management. I don't recommend wave management until gold for most players.
Okay, gold. There you
And
go.
even then, it's basic wave management. It's not
Basic, yeah, there's
advanced
levels
wave
of wave management. Yeah.
There's levels to that. It's just basic wave management. Knowing how to manage a wave. Like, that's all it is, essentially. Knowing how to slow build. Knowing how to fast push. Knowing how to freeze if you want to freeze. Rather than but whereas advanced wave manipulation is like you're already thinking about what you want to do with your wave way in advance. And you're doing things with your wave now that's going to set yourself up for success in the future. But essentially here, I would say if you're gold and above, I mean, okay, you get more value from watching the higher elo you get. So you should watch, I would say start reviewing your games in gold, but don't get obsessed over it. Review the first 5-10 minutes of your laning phase, that sort of thing. Don't spend a lot of time. Just see the fundamentals, the very basics. As you start to get to platinum, then you got to get more detailed. Diamond, you got to get more detailed, and things like that. And I would also go to the extent to say, in gold, would you say review every game, Nathan, to your clients? In gold, I say you do get value. You should, because it's less. Okay.
Yeah. I would say, just look at your deaths.
You just keep it simple, though. You don't. Yeah, you keep it very, very simple.
You don't you go to the point where it's like, these games are pretty much over because I've died, or just basic stuff. It's like, it makes sense why this game was so difficult because I literally have 30 farm at 10 minutes. I forced all these ganks and I'm 3 levels behind. It's like, okay, let's. That's something you can get that little niche thing. It's like, okay, why did that happen? It's like, okay, again, I forced ganks. I probably played around completely the wrong side because those ganks didn't work because I didn't understand champion matchup knowledge and stuff like that. And then, then that's where I'll work that out with them.
And one tip I give to people, if you are low elo in reviewing games, you're not sure what to look for. I like to use the reverse engineering technique where you look at a death and then go back from there. So that's all you need to do a lot of the time in low elo. So go back to a death when you died and literally be like, okay, given I died here, or even go to a situation where you felt was shit. A shit situation where the enemy got a roam off, whether you got chunked, whether you had to blow your flash, and just go back, start from that point, then go backwards to see what contributed to that situation. That's another technique you can do. But again, keep it very simple in gold. Platinum, get a bit more detailed. If you're unsure what to look for in your reviews, I have a video on my channel called What to Look For or How to VOD Review at Each Rank. I'll check that out if you're interested.
All right. Yep. I definitely agree with pretty much all that. Yeah. Gold below, play the damn game. Because again, I just see so many players, they just don't play enough to actually have the opportunity to even be good in the first place. Yeah. So even reviewing their games is just pointless because they're just not playing enough games. Yeah. And I think you're spot on. I think the higher you go, the more you need to watch. But but playing the game still should be a priority. It's not like it's like 40, 60.
You only ever should review if you're playing. You don't review if you're not playing, because the reason is you want to be able to. You got to implement what you're learning.
When should they watch Korean challenges? Who should be watching Korean challenges, Curtis?
I think you can watch Korean challenges for basic trading patterns and the way they play matchups knowledge. Yeah, even in gold and platinum. But don't go too in depth with the game pace and crazy concepts and tempo. Just purely focus on just basic trading patterns. And then you would look. Then once you start to get to diamond and stuff like that, or high plat, you can start to look at the way they're tethering. How specifically why are they taking the trades that they're doing, and jungle tracking and their warding and everything like that.
Yep. So I have a huge emphasis. I'd say the playing game section of your question here, Derek, this is definitely, I think, very important, just over across all elos. And then as you go higher and higher, then you can do all this other stuff here. But reviewing your game is definitely helpful using our content. All right. Next question here is from Moe. He's a Plat ADC player on EU and E. Loves our podcast, can relate to many things. Feels like that watching the podcast has helped shape his mindset. It's awesome to hear, Moe. He has a question about League's been around for a long time. It's evolved a lot. And also we can assume that, gold today was not gold, 5 years ago. 5 seasons ago. By analogy, he thinks, his question is it possible that Diamond players nowadays can beat world champions from earlier seasons, like season 3? What do you think? We spoke about this last episode. We hugely disagree on this, don't we, Curtis?
Oh yeah. So we'll talk about what your perspective is first, Nathan.
Okay, so I'm just trying to think right now. Okay, let's use. I want to utilize. Let's say discount season 1 and season 2 because the game was just a completely different game. Like the champions, like I talk about in the Worlds podcast. Like season 2 Worlds was like Maokai jungle into Mundo and like a Nivea mid and like all this shit. It's like the game was just ridiculous. Okay, so let's do season 3. SKT, Faker, Bengi, Piglet, Impact, Pumandu. Yeah, Pumandu. Yeah. And it's like, can a diamond team or diamond players beat them nowadays? No, not even close. Because do you know why? Because there's just an element of they can control that. Like you can't tell me a diamond player still has the mechanics of Faker has mechanics in season 3. It's not possible because I just can't see this. You seem to think that there is. So this is where I thought about this over the last week a lot, Curtis. You emphasize like laning and like macro strategy and stuff like that. I feel like too much, and you're discounting mechanics.
What?
And like,
what am I discounting? Micro laning is mechanics.
So you think the diamond micro player right now is a challenger player in season 3?
Yes. What the hell? Yes. You get like
season 5.
So what I said was, I said C9 Academy now. Or this year,
the first place team in NA Academy, yeah.
This is first place team in NA Academy, right? They had Fudge, they had King, pretty good team. C9 Academy would win season 3, 4, 5, and probably even season 6 Worlds, I believe. And
okay, I'll maybe give season 3 and season 4, but not 5 and 6.
And I believe that they would even probably make it very deep into season 7. If not win it. And the reason is that the game changed so much, Nathan, that you can just like people didn't know how to replicate leads and they didn't understand matchup intricacies as they do now. And like, okay, the way I'm viewing it now, dude, and the reason this is the case is because so I got 1,000 LP challenger in season 7 and players on Direwolves, pro players, they all got challenger in Korea in season 7. Fantix was like beating Dopa. Our mid laner was beating Dopa in season 7. This is just like random O's players. And these guys were rivaling some amazing players back then. And you know how little they knew about the game, Nathan? They literally knew nothing. They were winning off just pure instincts. They knew nothing.
What I'm saying is their instincts of the best players in the world in season 3, 4, 5, 6, that outweighs the instincts that a Diamond player would have today.
Okay, that's season 7. Remember that. This is season 7 OPL roster.
Okay, yeah.
Fudge now and King now in season 10. If season 7 King versus season 10 King, it's not even close.
That's true.
It's not even close.
Fudge
would kill Chippies solo 1 trillion times. It would be like the difference between Fudge in season 10 than Chippies in season 7 would probably be that of like a rank 1 challenger versus like a high plat. And the thing is laning is such an important part of the game. And not only now, Nathan, is laning important, it's they know how to translate leads. And the junglers especially know how to dominate. They know how to look at lanes more. They know how to translate leads, they kill objectives. They know how, like, the game has just evolved. So I think that, easily by far.
Would a platinum? Here's this. Would a platinum team make Worlds in season 3?
A high plat team.
High plat team.
I think so. Yes.
It's absolutely delusional, Curtis. No way.
This is where we disagree. I mean, I just think that the game has evolved way too much.
I need other people's opinions on this because it just confuses me how you're so convinced and why I'm so convinced on the other side.
Yeah, I'm so convinced, dude. And you know what? Again, I was 1,000 LP in season 7. It was like the top 10 in season 7. I was so bad at the game that like Like,
Yeah, but you were 1,000 LP in season 7, Curtis, but you weren't even close to being a world championship player.
Yeah, but okay. Putting me aside, the players on that team were on season 7 were so dumb, and they were still doing okay against the highest Korean players in Challenger back then.
Yeah.
You know, and how I'm using that as a benchmark to see how different even 3 seasons is. We're talking 5 seasons, and when we're talking way better players now. I mean, I literally think I don't understand how you. I actually don't understand how you think otherwise. That's the thing that confused me. I'm bamboozled.
Okay, I'll say a team like I would.
Our clash team. Let's think about our clash team.
Yeah,
Me, you, Charlie,
yeah,
and that top laner.
There's no fucking way we're Worlds, Curtis, in season 3.
Easily win Worlds in season 3. Easily. You need to lose. What's wrong with you, dude?
I don't know. There's more to.
Dude, I'm telling you, that would be like versing gold players.
It's like you're discounting. So you're basically discounting there was no teamwork in season 3, season 4, season 5, 6, 7.
No, there was teamwork.
No, so we don't have fucking teamwork. A bunch of diamond players don't have teamwork.
We know this, Nathan. We said this is what. Man,
okay. So 2 different things now. World champion. So is this teams or individual players?
I'm talking. I'm talking 2 things.
Okay, so let's say if it was Calvin King right now versus Beng. Sorry.
Okay, that's
Imp in solo queue in season 4.
We're not even talking about season 4-3 because that's just ridiculous.
I actually think King would actually probably beat Imp in season 4.
No shit. We're not even talking about season 3, season 4. Let's go all the way to season 5 and 6.
Okay.
I want to go to season 5 and 6, dude.
Yeah.
Right now, there is no doubt in my mind that C9 Academy would win season 5 Worlds. And probably even season 6. There's just no doubt in my mind, man. There is no doubt in my mind. Because the thing is, Nathan, is that there are concepts that literally didn't exist.
And there's concepts that haven't changed though as well. What's a good fight? What's a bad fight? What's the limits of my champion? What's my item spikes? That's stuff that hasn't changed as well, Curtis. A lot of League hasn't changed.
The laning is just too different.
You just think it outweighs. It just outweighs it so
much. The laning, because I don't think
maybe it's because I'm a jungler and I just haven't played. Maybe because I just took a 4-year break from the game, 3 years I didn't play. Maybe I'm just I'm like literally a boomer when it comes to the game.
Well, okay, literally, okay, think about it like this. Now as a jungler, it's pretty stock standard, even for a D1 jungler, to know for a diamond. Let's not even mid diamond. It's pretty stock standard for a mid diamond jungler to know when your camps are coming up and invade it on spawn, and even if they're playing Clash, they'll talk about priority, and then the diamond 1 mid laner would know how to sync their waves with the jungle, moving into the jungle and doing this shit. But in season 5 and stuff, the wave manipulation was so dog shit. People just back and forth bounce waves, and they don't know how, people.
So you think they had literally zero understanding, even the best teams in the world, best players in the world?
They did, but it was just so low level, and then also it wasn't coordinated. Pressure didn't mean shit. That's why the comps that we saw, pressure wasn't threats and pressure didn't really come into play properly, I would say, until season 7. Threats as a concept, I don't think really existed until maybe late season 6, early season 7. Where threat and kill threat and just the ability to force something trumped everything. Because that's why, by the way the game evolved in season 7, I don't know if you remember, but what happened was that teams realized, because I believe season 7 was when Rift Herald came in.
I wouldn't know, but it's coming. It's been for a while.
Yeah, season 6 or season 7. Anyway, what happened, Nathan, is that teams started to realize that if we just forced, we didn't play the game by the book, we could catch people off guard. So people then started to put an emphasis on drafting things that could force. That's why when Ornn came out, people started to realize, holy shit, Ornn could just force this fight.
Yeah, you can.
Not forcing the fight when we're ready to force the fight. Force the fight when like in a chaotic manner.
Mm.
And it felt like before that, it was all too calculated. It was all too rigid. And then it wasn't until season 7 and the game started getting very creative. People started to be very creative with the way they played the game. And I think now Gigabyte Marines playing the way they played seemed crazy back then, but they were just ahead of the curve. That was season 7. And Gigabyte Marines, all they were doing was they were utilizing threat. They were playing Galio Nocturne and like just like killing people. And people are like, what the hell? Who does that? Who just kills people like that? Even though it's inefficient, but it worked. And no one saw that before. That's why Gigabyte Marines was so successful in season 7. So my theory is that yes, maybe the underlying macro concepts, a lot of them are going to be exactly the same. And the vision and bullshit rotations, but there is another element. It's like the mindset is so different. Plus, not even taking into account the in-depth wave manipulation. That's what I think, anyway.
Okay, we can agree to disagree, Curtis. And I would love to hear other people's opinions on it. Honestly,
yeah, it would be interesting. It'd definitely be interesting to hear the people's opinions.
All right, move on to the next question, Curtis. We happy with how we wrapped up that one?
Yeah, I just can't wait to see the audience when they say
Curtis is right. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to copy. I want to learn here as much as I want to learn. I need to understand.
I just want you to get roasted.
All right. Question here from Agent Toast. So we actually answered his question a couple of weeks ago, I think. His question is, we talked about, that documentary about, what was that player on
Huang Fang.
Yeah, Huang Fang, who has that, amazing story where, rags to riches type stuff, being into finals. And wants to know about improving in solo queue. Is getting upset, losing control of your emotions always a bad thing, or it can be a good or bad thing for people for improving and climbing? And he says he thinks it may be good to feel upset after games as long as you use it as motivation and focus for finding ways to improve. Curious to see what our thoughts are and if you've used it the correct way.
I swear you should just read out the email properly.
You think I should? Okay.
Yeah, let's get feedback from the community as well. Should Nathan just read out the email properly or not?
Try summarize it into a little nice.
Yeah, but it makes it more awkward. I don't know. It's so hard for
me. Here we go, guys. Let me try this. Okay. All right. Yeah, because you're looking at the screen here, but I'm trying to put it into the perspective of a listener.
Okay.
Anyway, let me just read it out. Okay. All right. Hello, Curtis and Nathan. Thank you so much for answering my question last week on the stream. It was extremely helpful to hear your view on the ADC role. Also, just to answer the question you both posed this week, I do care about the pro scene. That was that question that we talked about. About do people care about the pro scene or not? Do they watch it esports? That we asked. He also enjoys hearing our take on coaching sessions, roster, meta, and draft. However, solo queue is more important to me since it directly impacts the actions I take, which I feel like is a lot of our listeners. They love listening to our solo queue stuff, right? Because we talk a lot about solo queue. So for this week, he began to wonder about two parts of the podcast. One is the section about the documentary on how hungry certain servers are to improve, but the other is about how we shouldn't get too upset and let solo queue control our emotions. Aren't the good, bad emotions a sign of how dedicated people are to improving and climbing? I think it may be good to get upset after games as long as we use it as motivation and focus for finding ways to improve. I was curious what your thoughts are since I'm not sure if I view it the correct way. All right, how's that, Curtis? Does that you can follow that a bit better?
Yeah, I think it's okay. We'll get feedback again from the community.
Yeah, we love feedback on BBC.
Yeah. All right.
Lots of feedback in the comment section here today, guys. We got about the style of this podcast, the way I answer questions, about question.
We're relying a lot on our audience here.
Yeah. Anyways, so let me start my perspective, Curtis. You definitely can't be the best if you don't get angry at yourself and periods of the time. All the best players that we've worked with, I've known, get very pissed off when they lose. They hate the perfect quote to summarize it. They hate losing more than they enjoy winning. They can't stand losing. So I think it's very important. But I see a lot of players and players that get this wrong, players I feel like get really upset at losing, but then they're just doing other stuff, like they're blaming their teammates and stuff like that. And that's the gold platinum players. I see this specifically in platinum players. Platinum players are very good at this. So yes, it can be a good thing, bad thing, but there's definitely a fine line. But again, if I always go back to negative emotions, very powerful. We learn the most. Humans just learn the most from painful experiences. And the best players are able to view, like, because you could die in a game of League and like you'll be like, yeah, it sort of sucks. But like if you die and you're like a pro player, it's like that's never happening again. Like I cannot stand, especially losing to a specific player, especially in like high elo or something like that. People can really get competitive, want to beat a specific player, and that actually pushes them to improve.
Yep, I would tend to agree. I think that the easiest way to instill change is through emotions. That's also why I believe it's important to. Okay, so I talk about this in the videos coming out tonight. I won't go too far in it, but it is important to recognize anything about how it's either negatively or positively affecting your life and get excited about it and be emotional about it in some way, shape, or form. As long as this is where discipline really comes into play and emotional control, which I think is something that comes with age. And I'm sure this is something we're probably going to talk a lot about on our podcast. But the one thing I did want to bring up here was that Kobe Bryant video. And Kobe Bryant has an interview, and the interviewer asked him a question saying, are you the sort of player that likes to win more than losing, like loves winning more than they hate losing, or do they hate losing more than they love winning? And then Kobe Bryant, the way he answered the question was, he's neither. He actually just, he thinks both are a weakness. And Kobe Bryant said that he says people that who have the, they hate losing, he thinks it can bring about that fear of losing and the fear of failure, because it's like, oh, what if I lose? Like, what's going to happen? Blah, blah, blah. But the people that love winning and they're obsessed about winning, what happens when they don't win? What happens when they lose? Are they going to crumble? Whatever it is. So he thinks that both are a weakness, and he thinks his advantage when it came to the court was he's going out there to play his best no matter what. Win or loss, he is giving it his all. And as long as he gave it his all and left it all on the court, there was nothing, and there's nothing else he could have given, then it did nothing else didn't mean anything. And in his mind, he said losing is actually, he says it in this weird, cheesy way. He kind of says how there's no such thing as losing. And then what he means by that is you've only lost when you don't show up to practice the next day, because there's always another season.
Love that. Yeah.
And he said that was his mentality. There's no such thing as a loss. And the only way it's a loss, or the only way, it's over, is when I don't show up to practice the next day. And so, I mean, yes, he's an anomaly, and yes, he's like, he's the GOAT, whatever. But I just found that interesting, and it might motivate you to think about it in a differing way. But yes, I do believe it's very important to get emotional because it shows you care, but you just got to be a little bit careful with the way you control your emotions. And something that can help you do that, again, is getting into the review. So most people, this is what happens. They lose, they're incredibly frustrated, they're angry, and they direct their anger, whether it's through chat, whether it's through insta-queuing into another game and angrily queuing up again, or flaming their teammates in my Discord and me saying, can you stop venting, or whatever it is. But what you need to do, take a second after the game, recognize you're a little bit pissed off, get a water break, get a snack, go outside, whatever you need to do, come back a few minutes later, sit back, get into the review. And the great thing about getting into the review is that now you're able to see, again, what actually happened. How did you contribute to that situation in any way? Like, surely there's something that you could have done. There always is something that you could have done better. You didn't play perfectly. You're not Faker. Even Faker doesn't play perfectly. And that's going to distract you from the result of that game in a weird way. It's like the review is a great tool of distraction. That's another little tip. But yeah, it's completely normal. I think emotions are great, just the way you manage them.
Love it. I actually need to revisit that Kobe Bryant video, actually. That actually motivated me, because when you said that, it's like about solo queue. It's like, this is the way I need to view it, man. It's like,
yeah, for sure.
Playing like the next game, like get into the review, go back to the next game.
Yep.
So important, man. Honestly, you get so wrapped up about your elo and because that's what I've been doing recently. I mean, master promos, Curtis. Then I instantly fail them. It's like, who cares? I mean, fucking master promos, just play your best. Holy shit. Wake up, Nathan.
Wake up.
God, man, I got a lot of work to do this next season.
do.
Honestly.
You do a lot of work. We all
All
do.
right. We all do. That's right. We're all at different stages.
Just because what you got this last season doesn't mean shit.
That's right. It literally doesn't mean. And that's why I tell myself as well. It's like, I'm just going to be challenging next season.
It doesn't matter.
Do it. You know,
everyone's going to forget. Everyone's going to forget I got top 10 last season anyways. What your rank is now is the most important thing.
That's right. Yeah. That's what I talked about, living in the past. You know, we're living in the present. All right.
Exactly.
All right. So that's going to wrap it up for our Broken by Concept BBC episode number 15. This is like our second retake. Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, that's a very good, Curtis. Ooh, fancy. We can also do this, Curtis. Ooh, this is that sign off thing. Let's go back to this. This is cool. This was an interesting episode. We did a lot of changes here. So yeah, we need to know from you guys about what do you guys think of this format versus me and Curtis on the casting couch? Do you guys just hate it that much that we just have to go back to it because also the mic quality, audio quality? Obviously, if you're listening to this on Spotify, I mean, you're obviously going to want to prefer that. But we'll try and figure out like how the microphones and stuff will work. Try and make that improve. Also, you notice our little logo on the top right. We had one of our listeners, our loyal listeners, Raxius, who made that for us. Want to shout him out for that. He did it completely for free. I said I'll shout him out. I'll chuck his Twitter, link to his Twitter in the YouTube. Definitely a little upgrade to our current logo. So I really appreciate that. And any other last words, Curtis?
No, that's it, man.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you in episode number 16 of Broken by Concept.
Catch up.